If it is your wish, I will travel anywhere to meet you. Auto Memories doll Violet Evergarten at your service. Hello, it's nice to officially meet you. Like I said, my name is Violet Evergarten, Auto Memories doll from the CH Postal Company. I understand that you have hired me to help you with some transcripts. Alright then, shall we begin? Lovely. Please, show me where I may set up my typewriter and we can begin. Yes, this shall do nicely for a workspace. Thank you. Now, if you wouldn't mind telling me, what is it that we will be transcribing? I see. A collection of stories. Children's stories. From a volume that is falling apart. You would like to preserve them. I think that sounds lovely. I am ready to begin whenever you are. Alright. Once upon a time, there was a maiden with long, shimmering hair who lived in a tower. She had lived there her entire life and never seen the outside world. She had been brought there as an infant after her parents had stolen from their neighbor who was secretly a witch. She had been given as payment for stealing from her garden when the mother had craved the vegetable for which she had been named, which was called Rapunzel. Is that correct so far? It is? Wonderful. Shall we continue? Perfect. The maiden, who had lived her entire life in the tower, grew more beautiful with each year, and her long, shimmering hair could reach the ground, and that is how the witch would reach her in the tower. She would call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And every night, Rapunzel would sing sad and beautiful songs about how lonely it was in her tower. And one night, a young man, the prince, in a nearby kingdom, heard her sorrowful, mournful tune. And he followed the sound of her voice, and he listened until morning, and he heard the witch call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," and saw her beautiful golden locks tumble out the window, and saw the witch climb up into the tower. So later that evening, after the witch had left, he mimicked her voice and said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And so she did so, and up he climbed. At first, Rapunzel was startled to see the young man, but after he explained that he had heard her sorrowful songs and wished to keep her company, she allowed him to stay until almost sunrise, when she knew the witch would arrive. At which point she sent him away, and the prince did come back for many months, until the night that they lost track of time and were accidentally discovered by the witch, when the sun had risen and he was still there, and she called down, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel had to do so, for if she didn't, the witch would become suspicious. The prince tried to hide in the tower, but it was quite small, and there were no places to hide, and was discovered quite easily by the witch. The witch then threw him from the tower and into the briar patch, which caused him to go blind. She then threw the maiden from the tower as well. After the prince had been blinded, the two wandered away from each other for many months, until eventually they happened upon each other when he heard her sorrowful tune. and she cried tears into his blinded eyes which healed him, and then the two were married, and they lived happily ever after. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Ella who lived in a cottage with her mother and father. She was well loved and well cared for. She was very beautiful and very kind. One day, the girl's mother took ill and passed away. Several years later, her father took a new wife. This wife was very different than Ella's mother. She was cold and uncaring. Shortly after her father took his new wife, he too passed away from an unknown illness. When that happened, Ella's stepmother dismissed the household and decided that Ella would become the household, and used her to do all of the chores and tend all the animals. And she would often have to sleep near the hearth just to keep warm, and her stepsisters began to call her Cinderella because of the cinders that were often found in her hair. This went on for many years, until one day the king announced that he would be having a ball, and every maiden in the kingdom was to attend, so he may pick a bride. Well, Cinderella was very excited to hear this, as she thought that this could be her opportunity to spend one evening of fun away from her stepmother and stepsisters. She wasn't that interested in marrying the prince, but she did want to have at least one night of fun. Her stepmother said that she may attend the ball if she picked all of the lentils out of the fireplace in 2 hours' time. And so Cinderella called out to the birds to help her pick the lentils out of the fireplace and place them into a bowl. But even though Cinderella had removed all the lentils from the fireplace, in the 2 hours' time, her stepmother forbade her from going to the ball, for she had no appropriate clothing to wear, only the rags that she wore to clean house every day and tend to the farm animals. "You cannot go in those dirty things," her stepmother said. "You will be the embarrassment of the entire royal family if you attend in that." And off her stepmother and stepsisters went in their finery, leaving Cinderella alone in the cottage to cry. Cinderella was left alone in the garden, crying, when an old beggar woman came to the gate and asked for a crust of bread. Cinderella stopped her crying and obliged the woman, giving her the last of her dinner, allowing the old woman to eat in the garden with her, and they spoke. When the old woman finished her meal, her disguise melted away, and she turned into Cinderella's fairy godmother. And she transformed Cinderella's rags into a beautiful ball gown. She also provided her with horsemen, a carriage, and a coach, and a pair of sparkling glass slippers, which she wore to the ball, where she danced with the prince all night. But when the clock struck midnight, she had to go, for the fairy godmother said that the spell would end at midnight. So off Cinderella ran, but she left behind one of her glass slippers by mistake. The prince tried to chase Cinderella, but was unsuccessful. So the next day he made a proclamation to the kingdom, saying that all eligible maidens were to try on the shoe that were left behind. And the prince himself went to each household and tried the shoe on every maiden. But no matter who he tried the shoe on, because of the magic, it would not fit any other maiden but Cinderella. And when he finally approached the final house, the stepsisters tried their hardest to hide Cinderella, as did the stepmother. But as the prince was leaving, her singing could be heard in the attic, and they demanded that she be let out to try on the shoe. And when the slipper fit, she was taken away to the palace to live happily ever after. The end. You would like us to get through one more story today? Alright, that's fine. One more it is. Once upon a time, there was a little mermaid who lived in the ocean with her father and her sisters. She was the youngest daughter of the Sea King, the seventh daughter, who represented one of the seven seas. She would often go to the surface to watch the ships. She loved watching the ships and the human folk and all their funny ways, although this was not allowed, and she was often scolded for going to the surface, for if she were caught, she would be caught in a net and gawked at by the humans, for they did not believe in mermaids. Though the young mermaid did have a favorite ship to watch. It was the ship of the young prince in the nearby kingdom. His ship was her favorite, for she had a fondness for the young prince, and she often enjoyed watching him. He was a very skilled sailor, and very smart, and very handsome. She would often go when she knew he was going on adventures, to watch him sail away from his kingdom. But one day, a terrible storm struck, and his ship went down when she was watching. Well, the young mermaid could not help herself, and did the unthinkable, and saved the young prince, even though this was against the rules, and brought him back to the shore. She quickly swam away as he regained consciousness, but he was sure that he saw a maiden swimming back into the ocean as he regained his consciousness, and he could not get the maiden out of his mind, and the young mermaid could not get the prince out of her mind either, so much so that she became listless and ill. For the young mermaid loved the prince very much, and she wanted very much to be human and to be with him. So, she once again decided to break the rules and went to go and see the Sea Witch, a mermaid who had been banished long ago for using black magic and breaking the rules of mermaid society. The young mermaid went and saw her, and she gave her a potion that would turn her human for 7 days. But there were consequences to the potion. The potion would cause the mermaid great pain when she walked, and she would be unable to speak at all to the prince, for mermaids and humans spoke different languages, and the potion could not reach the barrier of language amongst the humans and the mermaids. And if the prince did not fall in love with the mermaid within 7 days and kiss her, she would be turned into sea foam. Well, the mermaid was sure the prince would fall in love with her and recognize her as soon as he saw her, so she took the potion and swam to the surface world, where she spent the next 7 days trying to win the prince's affections. And he did care for her, but not in the way that she wanted him to. He cared for her the way one might care for a dog or a cat or a younger sibling, but not the way she cared for him. In fact, he didn't even recognize her as the maiden who had saved his life. He was sure that she was someone else who had been shipwrecked in an unfortunate tragedy. On the 5th day that the mermaid spent on the surface, true tragedy struck when a princess came from a neighboring kingdom, and the prince thought that she was the maiden who had saved him, and fell immediately in love with her, and declared that they should be married at sunset. Well, they were married, and the princess would be turned into sea foam in 2 days. But her sisters came to her at the window near the castle and gave her a dagger and said that if she killed the prince, she would be turned back into a mermaid and would be allowed to return to live in the sea with her sisters and father again. So the young mermaid took the knife and took it into the prince's chamber and held it above his chest, ready to plunge it into his heart but she could not bring herself to do it, for she loved the prince too much. And so, that night, she lay in bed, resigned to be turned into sea foam, when the angels visited her and said that she had the chance to live among them, and every time somebody did a good deed, she might have the chance to be redeemed, and if 1,000 good deeds were done in 1,000 years that she would witness, she would be allowed to return to the sea. If not, she would be turned to sea foam. And that was the end of The Little Mermaid. There you are, sir. Are you satisfied with your transcripts for today? Lovely. I think I shall retire, and we shall work again tomorrow. Thank you for this opportunity. If it is your wish, I will travel anywhere to meet you. Violet Evergarten, Auto Memories Doll.